would you have a look at this? This is a brand new 2025 Nissan Kicks, and honestly it feels like the designers of Nissan took the Kicks to a whole new level when it comes to class, quality, elegance. This feels a lot more grown up than the old one. It is still an entry-level Nissan, so it's not going to be super expensive. So of course, what are we going to do in this video is have a look at this gorgeous new design and compare it to the old one from front, side, and rear, and also the interior. But before we do that, we need to have a look at what's going on with the spec and tech here for this beautiful new Nissan Kick. So let's look at this article from Car and Driver. I'm going to link this down below in the description if you want to go and check this out. So the 2025 Nissan Kicks glows up, now offering all-wheel drive and more space. Also includes a bigger engine. However, I would like to see at least two engine options here, because this is a pretty weak engine for this beautiful type of package, but more on that in a minute. You have a cheeky design and more available tech features. The new model is larger than before on pretty much every single dimension and will go on sale in the US late summer of this year. So while the first generation Kicks was more of an entry-level front-wheel drive hatchback with crossover-esque styling, this redesign brings it more into the subcompact SUV mainstream. And look at this new design, how different this is from the previous generation Kicks. I think this is a fantastic looking car. It's taller, longer, and wider than the old Kicks. You have optional two-tone color schemes. I love this styling that we have here, the red roof with the silver, and then you have the red splash of the taillight connecting to the red that we have up top, looking fantastic. The trims you have are the S, SV, and SR trims, and here's the thing, with the SR trim, that's where I want to have a little bit more power. And this, of course, is the SR, the fully loaded Kicks up here with the 19-inch wheels. I kind of like the wheel design, but more on that in Photoshop when we jump in there. You also have special accent lights below the headlights, and that would be just that reason to have those LEDs in the front would be my personal reason why I would definitely go for the SR. And the thing is, they didn't just work on the styling here, they made it more functional, more an off-road, so you can take this, you know, not on some rugged trails, but you can still take this off-road because you have a significantly higher ground clearance here. You have 8.4 inches compared to just 7 for the previous model. And you also have a 7-inch touchscreen as standard here in the middle. This is the new interior. You can see that we do have a sort of an iPad on the dash here, but you know, it's an entry-level Nissan, so I guess it's fine. And for the optional SR, you do have the 12.3-inch digital screens, both for the gauge cluster right here behind the steering wheel obviously, and also the infotainment screen here. The overall interior looks pretty clean here. Now for the powertrain, and this is where I want to switch it up a little bit. So you have one single powertrain, and that is the 141 horsepower 2-liter inline 4 that is also found in the Sentra. And I wasn't impressed with the performance specifically when it was connected with the CVT. So for the SR, I would like to see maybe a turbo with 180 horsepower and maybe a 8-speed automatic for the SR. That would be really cool, specifically since this design is such a cool looking design. Front wheel drive is standard, and as was the case before, but all wheel drive is not an optional, an option on all trim levels, even the base trim S. Expect the new model to be a little bit more expensive than the old one because it is bigger, it's a lot more technology in this as well, but it's still an entry-level vehicle, so it will start around maybe $23,000 for the base S front-wheel drive. If I were to get this, you know, I would pick the SR just because of the styling, but I would even if I would get the base, I would still get it with all-wheel drive. So about $30,000 for a fully loaded SR all-wheel drive. So let's jump in to Photoshop here and have a look at this beauty. Nissan is actually crushing it right now when it comes to their designs. The old one still looked very clean. This design now that I have with the old Kicks has been on so many Nissan models. It has started to feel a little bit, not outdated, but we're so used to seeing this V-motion grille in the front, and we're still, again, it looks good, it looks great, but it feels a little bit dated because we've seen this design on so many other Nissan models. Still a beautiful looking design, but look at the new one. What a contrast to the old one. It looks almost like a small little luxury subcompact SUV with this stately front end, which now it has a much more upright design. And you can see the grille here beautifully done with these ribs that goes in the front end, and then they continue on this SR model here, continue into the sides here and creating these daytime run lights at the bottom. So if you look at this car at night even, you can definitely tell that this is a Nissan. And I think this is a really cool design twist for Nissan and their design language to play around with the LEDs in the front end to even at night have a very strong identity, something that we couldn't really say of the old kicks up here. Beautifully done. And we also have this starting point, and you know I like a starting point like this when we have one single line up top that is the one line, and underneath is where all the new the graphics or the face is being built up for the front end design. We also have some black graphic here connecting to the lower section of the black, and also down here it looks like we do have some golf ball sort of texture in the lower section. So very nicely done by Nissan, this change, and I do think it feels like a much more grown up design when you look at these two designs. Now looking at the side view here, there's also a big difference here. The old one had more of a funky, more of a playful design with a rake to it, which gives it, if we look at this line here, the shoulder line connecting to the corner of the headlight here, and it goes up into this beautiful D-pillar in this case. We also have all this line at the bottom. You see that they're pointing upwards, giving it this rake motion and giving it a forward motion in addition to the sloping roof line up top, which gives it this, further emphasizes this forward motion for the design. Still, again, a very beautiful looking design. We do have a connection to the taillight here as well, with this second part of the shoulder line underneath the main shoulder up top. But now if you look at the new one, again, it just looks more stately, because look at the difference of the shoulder line here. We have a straight shoulder going from the corner of the headlight, stretching all the way straight back into, yes, we do have a connection to the corner of the taillight there as well. I do love that they kept this feature with this body style, body work cutting into the D-pillar here. We have the same sort of playful design, so a little bit more playful, still playful, because this again is the entry-level SUV, so you can have a lot more fun with this smaller siblings in the lineup than the larger ones. We still have this upswing of the body color in the rear end looking beautiful. This being the SR, I love this spec with the red roof, two-tone color scheme, red roof and silver accents for everything else, and the paint color of the body itself. We also have this section down here, and you know what this does? It carves out some of the mass from the overall height of the body, and I do love that they kept a nice thick beautiful chamfer down here as well, because this then makes a sort of a housing for this key graphics at the bottom and make it feel welcomed in the lower section of the car. We also have black trim around the wheelhouses here with another chamfer right above it up top. These wheels, I'm not 100% sold on the wheel design here. I kind of like, let's see what happens if we copy the old wheels and put them onto the new one here. Now let's see what that would look like if we just splash these wheels onto this. They still look a little bit dated, I would say, but I do still prefer this design of the wheels to have the old wheel designs. These look more EV inspired in my opinion, but again brings in a new modern touch to the overall design of the Nissan Kicks. You can see that the rear end, looking at it from this view, is also completely vertical in contrast to the more sloping line that we have here, and then more styling and soft rounded corners and edges that we have in the previous design of the Nissan Kicks. And here you can see the front end beautifully done, also stately looking with the vertical limit of the front end. Now looking at the rear end, this is where it becomes a lot more advanced, I would say, for the tail end design. But the thing is, it still has a clear connection to the front end graphics. The old one still had this typical Nissan design, very stylized for the small little kicks of the previous generation. We have a nice chamfer up top here. We have a line here as well, creating this housing for the license plate holder down at the bottom. and a cool looking bumper at the bottom here as well, plastic, so you don't have to worry about scratching it or anything like that. We have sort of a diffuser diaper down here because this is a body color island in the lower section that sits all by itself and does not have any connection to the rest of the body here, the body color. So it's kind of reaching for it, but it can't reach all the way. Now looking at the new one here, completely different design philosophy, design DNA, language from Nissan, and I do think if this Kicks looks this good, the new Pathfinder is going to be absolutely stunning when that comes out. We already seen essentially what it's going to look like with the Pathfinder concept, which was a great looking car, and I do think the production version is going to look very much like that as well. So down here we do have a lot more static again, a little bit more structure in the rear end, and we do have these taillights now cutting in here to this black piece. We don't have a full LED bar, which I'm glad to see, because not every single new car needs to have a light bar in the rear, but we do have these 3 LEDs in the taillights, which I think is going to be standard on all trims. But I would still get the SR because now we have these taillights have a clear connection to the 3 LEDs that we have in the front end. Again, these two-tone look absolutely fantastic with the red roof up top. We do have a, I wouldn't call this a diffuser diaper because it's just silver. It's not really this silver that we have in the body color. Still looks good, sporty in the back. We do have an exhaust pipe sticking out there, and it feels just more like a unit, this design. You can see the ground clearance here, just how much higher up. 8 inches of ground clearance, 8 point something, I can't remember, compared to the 7-inch that we had in the old Kicks. Now last but not least, we need to have a look at this interior as well. So the old Kicks interior, I think this is probably where I think the old Kicks started to look a little dated. This styling of the housing for the gauge cluster here, this round feel that we have looks pretty dated and mid 2000-ish to me. Same with the outline here for the infotainment screen, for example. So this is where I think the old Kicks definitely needed a refresh, even though I don't have anything against this interior, because we have physical buttons and things that I want to see. Maybe a very small infotainment screen here. I don't really need a bigger screen than that. But looking at the new one here, you can see that the standard is going to be a 7-inch screen for the infotainment screen. In this case, we are looking at the 12.3 inch for the SR. We also have a 12.3 inch gauge cluster here. And you can see that this is the typical integration of infotainment screens / gauge clusters that we see these days, with just having a long, probably a little bit curvature to this design to have both screens integrated in that design. But thankfully, it doesn't stick up too far into the field of view for the driver. So it sits pretty low here and sort of have a connection to this line here. I do like the simplicity of these lines that we have here. Looks like we have some physical buttons down here for the climate control settings, which is great. We also have of course, gear lever for the CVT gearbox. And the thing is, this is a good example of when you have a cheaper car like the new Nissan Kicks is, they always have a better interior, in my opinion, than if you were to buy a $60,000, $70,000 car, because they don't have this array of physical buttons down here like we have in cheaper cars like the Kicks. Overall, Nissan is on a roll right now. I do love the new Nissan Z. It's one of the best looking retro inspired designs. I love that they took a lot of inspiration for the 240Z, obviously. And then we have the new Pathfinder coming out, the new concept we've seen. As I said, I think is going to look pretty much like the concept, the production versions, whenever that comes out. And now we also have the Nissan Kicks being all grown up and a little bit more serious, and I'm looking forward to seeing this in real life.